Welcome back to the Crypto Clown World podcast. I'm your host with the honks, Jason Bruce. We are honking back in on the 21st of July, 2024. As always, I have my co host with me here, Mr. Christopher Lundy. How's it going today, sir?
Dude, I am fist pumping like Jersey Shore nightclubs right now, man. Feeling it.
not fist pumping after Trump got his ear grazed by a bullet?
No, that's just all you need is the gym, tan, laundry, and a little bit of alcoholic beverages. That's really it. That's all you need in life.
Well, yeah, Trump's only got the tan out
Not,
of the three, so.
yeah, well, he's definitely had a share of alcoholic beverages, I guess, being a former casino magnate. But
Yeah, from what I've heard, man, he swears he doesn't drink. I guess his brother was an alcoholic and he didn't like that look, so he didn't go that direction. Um,
well, he's still here, so I guess we'll see.
he's
Not
ad-
that, yeah.
he's admitted that his vice is the ladies.
Well, he's displayed it to the world, frankly. But you know,
Indeed, sir, indeed.
but
So,
let's not give too much attention to Mr. Trump, shall we?
well, he's going to be our president here soon, so. Um,
Mm,
but we do have some big news on that that we
we
will be
do.
getting to later on in the show. So,
Hmm.
I want to ask everybody though, super important, and I don't always ask this at the top of the show, and I probably should. So before we jump into the news and the geopolitical updates with Chris, if you're here, I want to thank you first of all. If you're here for the first time, that's awesome. Make sure that you get subscribed to our channel and hit the like button here. Hit the bell for notifications as well, because we're going to bring you podcasts and updates in the future in a timely manner. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. We do need your support. We are a fledgling channel. We are trying to grow in a growing bull market as things start to progress here over the next few months and years. So I really, really would ask people to give us that support if you have been enjoying what you have heard up to this point, or if you are a new listener, make sure that you are supporting us in that manner because we are going to bring you stuff that you will not hear anywhere else. So, with all that said, and we've got that out of the way, I'm going to let Chris take over and we'll see what he's got here from the geopolitical side and from the news side. I know there's a lot going on. So, Chris, what do you got, sir?
Well, what we got is a lot more than a nothing burger on today's show, Jason. We've got as our top story. This comes from an article from Forbes.com, and the header of this is rather deceptive because it states BlackRock CEO issues, quote, massive, close quote, warning after crypto flip that powered a Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP price boom. And yet, here is the leader. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned countries around the world are moving away from the U.S. dollar as the spiraling $34 trillion U.S. debt pile fuels fears of collapse, with Bitcoin and crypto slowly chipping away at dollar dominance. You heard that correctly, ladies and gentlemen. Dollar dominance is being eroded by crypto assets and Bitcoin. What have I been saying about Bitcoin and BRICS, the energy settlement layer of the future? Very interesting. Continuing, the Bitcoin price has rocketed over the last year, climbing despite a critical Federal Reserve warning and helped by bettors who are increasingly confident former U.S. President Donald Trump will retake the White House in November of 2024. Now, one thing that I do want to mention from this is that we've already known, or if you've been a regular listener viewer of the podcast, it's been pretty clear that dollar dominance in terms of not necessarily purchasing power parity, but geopolitically has become less desirable due to sanction activity, due to warfare, due to lawfare, due to theft of Russian assets, Nigeria wanting to repatriate their gold. The list goes on. Trust in the U.S. financial system is at an all-time low, which is bad for Americans and potentially good for Americans. There are good and bad outcomes here. It just depends on ensuring that wealth is transferred towards you rather than away from you. And if the U.S. Treasury Secretary is issuing these types of warnings, you have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt, because we're dealing with certain individuals within the establishment that want to see a dollar collapse so that they can benefit from that. That does not necessarily mean that there will be one, because let's not forget that Donald Trump, in his platform, at least that has been publicly made available, is claiming that his White House will start an initiative to acquire approximately 2 million Bitcoin as part of a general strategic reserve asset allocation. That's almost 10% of the entire known Bitcoin supply that hasn't been lost. And a lot of the early supply was lost because people lost their keys, they lost their hard drives. It was a hobby for them in the early days of Bitcoin. So, how they're going to get that liquidity, what price they're going to have to pay to get that Bitcoin, are they going to be able to get it over the counter at a reasonable price? It's doubtful. It's hard to say. But what this tells me is that there are people within the government and within the establishment that are starting to seriously think about diversification of assets as a national security issue, because they're coming to terms with the fact that, you know what, these sanctions aren't just backfiring, they're bankrupting us. We've got to change course. To what course has yet to be determined. So keep an eye open for that, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to our next story from Reuters.com. And this is following up on a story from Craig Wright's trial, where he was attempting to assert his role as a either Bitcoin developer, inventor, or contributor, or something of this nature. Well, we've got a new headline with Mr. Wright, no pun intended. Self-proclaimed Bitcoin inventor faces UK criminal probe for alleged perjury. Here's the leader. London. This is London, UK. This is from July the 16th. An Australian computer scientist who claimed he invented Bitcoin faces a criminal investigation in Britain for alleged perjury after he was found to have repeatedly lied and forged documents to support his false claim. Craig Wright had long claimed to have been the author of a 2008 white paper, The Foundational Text of Bitcoin, published under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. The 54-year-old brought litigation based on his claim around the world, including the United States and Britain, culminating in a trial at London's High Court last year. And one more paragraph from this article. The Crypto Open Patent Alliance, whose members include Twitter founder Jack Dorsey's payments firm Block, took Wright to court to stop him suing Bitcoin developers. What does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means that they're very bad actors in the crypto space that talk a big game that are actually nothing burgers. And this is the opposite of having something the opposite of a nothing burger. Well, Mr. Wright is a nothing burger, ladies and gentlemen. He holds a senior position at N-Chain, which is a British firm that has heavy ties to the military industrial complex, is big time behind the CBDC agenda. So the fact that he's employed there still and is making these claims not only sheds bad light on him, but bad light on the people that he's currently working with, and lays some very serious questions as to why are companies like N-Chain, associating with Craig Wright when he's making these types of claims when they're going hard after the CBDC agenda. That should tell you a lot, ladies and gentlemen, because that means that they wanted to have their guy declared the inventor so that they could have their way with the protocol. So, no offense to the Craig Wright fanboys or anything, but you got it wrong in this one, ladies and gentlemen. Just letting you know. Moving on. As I reported in last week's show about NATO establishing a liaison office in Amman, Jordan, in a recent article in The Cradle. Great website, by the way. Highly recommended if you're new to geopolitics, especially in West or South Asia. Islamic State has announced its new branch and presence in Amman, Jordan, with a video that was dated July 19th. Very interesting that this happens at the exact same time that NATO announces a liaison office in the exact same city. Does this mean that NATO and Islamic State are in cooperation? Is Islamic State now a proxy force of NATO? Worth considering, because if we look at Operation Gladio, and for anybody that's not familiar with what Operation Gladio was basically a NATO stay-behind force that was established in many southern and Eastern European countries, such as places like Italy and France, some areas of Spain, but especially Italy, with that would commit attacks against communist terrorist groups or purported communist terrorist groups with a stay-behind neo-Nazi patrol. It was basically a way of scaring people into submission to not go the way of communism as it was currently being implemented in places such as Soviet Russia at the time, purportedly. And it was later determined that Silvio Berlusconi, former prime minister of Italy, was an agent within Operation Gladio, and as were many other major European leaders when they were young and later on when they became, heads of state, etc. So I think that if this is, in fact, and I have no evidence to prove that Islamic State and NATO are in coordination in this context, but if they weren't in coordination, or at least if they were actually in opposition, they wouldn't be setting up a branch right next to NATO. So that tells me that Islamic State is not considered to be anything other than at least a tacit partner of NATO, or a presence that they're willing to accept. So that means that they are not aligned with the so-called resistance axis that is developed throughout the Levant and the wider Middle East. So I expect that many countries, including Iraq, Yemen, and Syria, are eyeballing Jordan for kind of turning on them. And I don't think Jordan is going to be spared the hostilities that are coming, especially Yemen, as a result of this move. The Hashemite kingdom of Jordan is going to undergo some very significant changes over the course of the next 2 to 5 years, ladies and gentlemen. So have a look at what's happening in Jordan. It's a very important geopolitical spot within the Middle East. Moving on. Next, we've got an infographic. Now, this infographic is Coinbase versus Uniswap trade volume. Now, this is from Unfolded. The source of this chart is Kaiko Market Metrics. And what you're seeing in yellow is Coinbase's percentage of weekly trade volume, and in black, Uniswap's percentage of weekly trade volume. Now, Uniswap launched in around summer 2020. I think that was when the asset first went live, as I recall. I could be wrong. But that's, as I remember, it was when the initial airdrops are coming through for Uniswap, was around that time. So this year, in 2024, Uniswap's trading volume on Ethereum has managed to keep up with Coinbase, the largest US-based exchange, maintaining an average market share of 24%. Now, this is noteworthy because in September of 2020, Uniswap's trade volume actually exceeded Coinbase's for a brief period of time. There have actually been some spikes in Uniswap's volume at exact intervals where Coinbase's volume has declined. If you flip these charts upside down, they almost look like a mirror image of each other, which I find to be very interesting. Because if Uniswap's captured that much market share, or at least that much trade volume, that means that more DEXs are going to come into play that will do something similar. But the problem with Uniswap is it's not really decentralized. This is a WEF-backed project. It's heavily surveilled. Censorship is supported on chain. It's not that much different from ETH in this context. So it's very important to keep that in mind when you're thinking about what a DEX is versus what it is not. And I would argue to anybody that would ask me is that anything on ETH is not decentralized, whether it claims to be a decentralized exchange or decentralized asset or not, because it's a centralized asset. You can't mine it. It's a centralized asset, or at least, you know, when done in the way that it's being done here. Moving on to the land of China, the great land of China with the Great Firewall. So the Communist Party of China has expanded the Great Firewall with socialist AI bots to ensure population remains obedient to Xi Jinping. Here's the leader. This is from Zero Hedge, dated July 17th, excuse me. So here's the leader. China's ruling Communist Party has been implementing bold new guidelines across ChatGPT style large language models, also known as LLMs, at major domestic tech firms. These measures aim to prevent the models from generating content that could subvert state power or criticize the communist political system. Chinese authorities' efforts to control AI and use it as a mass censorship tool are essentially an extension of their 2-decade-long, quote, Great Firewall, close quote, policy. A new Financial Times report states that the Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC, the country's top internet regulator, is reviewing LLMs, large language models, from tech companies and AI startups including ByteDance, Alibaba, Moonshot, and 01.ai. The goal is to ensure these LLMs, quote, embody core socialist values, close quote. Core socialist values. Do those core socialist values include power coming from a barrel of a gun? Do those core socialist values include mass burning of books, like what happened in 1941? Do those policies include mass genocide of farmers, which they did? I don't know. Well, what are these core socialist values that they're speaking of? Well, obedience is essentially it. This is what ChatGPT and similar LLMs that are online are really for, ladies and gentlemen, only giving you regime-approved talking points. Well, this is another, shall we say, damage control situation for the Chinese, because people are simply going to move to localized LLMs. They're going to move to offline LLMs that they can use kind of like encyclopedias that will give them accurate responses that pass the censorship test, such as Llama 3. So if you're looking for something that is an alternative, I would say go with Llama 3 or potentially Venice.ai, which is Eric Voorhees's private permissionless AI. Look into Venice.ai. If you're looking for alternatives there. But just another interesting anecdote from this article I just wanted to mention a couple paragraphs down. The team overseeing this process is highly trained in the artificial intelligence field. An employee of a Hangzhou-based startup who asked not to be named said, and I quote, "A special team doing this. They came to our office and sat in our conference room to do the audit," close quote. That means that the government is sending out their own little squads to go make sure that their little tech bros are going to batten down the hatches on freedom of speech in China. Moving on to the next paragraph, quote, "We didn't pass the first time. The reason wasn't very clear, so we had to go and talk to our peers," close quote, the person said, adding, and I quote, "It takes a bit of guessing and adjusting. We passed the second time, but the whole process took months," close quote. And this goes back to AI hallucinations. These things are being put into place thinking that they're infallible. They're not, ladies and gentlemen. They're dependent upon human input to be properly functional. And you can ask a question 15 different ways and you'll actually get a result by tricking the AI. So what does this mean? Well, it means that countries like China facing population decline, facing economic ruin, as well as facing a demographic crisis that they're going to have some difficulty to recover from. They're going to have to start finding people to make babies really quick. And in fact, they're actually, for the first time that I know of, incentivizing financially people to have children domestically inside of China. So not only are these people going full control freak in terms of what you can see online. They are so incapable of making sense of their own decisions that they implemented a one-child policy that will, carve their own country up. So it's clear to me that the biggest threat to the Chinese economy is China itself. And I think there are going to be some some bits of reckoning that need to happen domestically inside of China. I think that China can be improved by the current circumstances, but communist regimes usually have about a 75 to 85-year shelf life, and China's due. And I don't expect that communism will exist in China in 50 years' time. I don't see how it's sustainable, mainly because of how deliberate the actions that the governments there typically take to undermine their own country are becoming increasingly more and more unpopular. And the only thing that's really kind of smoothing things over is some type of monetary redress, which is why they went so hard on economic overinvestment. Well, malinvestment is something that's very common in communist regimes, ladies and gentlemen. They tend to throw something at the wall as much as they can to see if it sticks, and then when it doesn't, they shift the blame. It's always what they do. Moving on. Lots of Zero Hedge articles, but I think this is the last one from Zero Hedge. There's a lot of good content on Zero Hedge this week, ladies and gentlemen. So this one is about the AI bubble, staying on the AI topic. This is a premium article. So I'm only going to get bits and pieces of the leader here. So hedge funds flee AI bubble now, quote, most underweight tech stocks on record, close quote. And the brief leader that you can get from this is we got a hint of what will happen once the AI bubble burst last Thursday, when we saw not only a frenzied sell-off in tech, but also the biggest divergence between the tumbling NASDAQ and the rest of the market. So that means that we've got trend reversals taking place here. We've got a big AI tech bubble that I've already spoken to. And if you have a look at the Goldman Prime book, it's now underweight TMT stocks by negative 12.4% versus SPX, which was down 8.7% at the end of May, which is the most underweight level ever on record. So what does this mean? Well, that means that some of these fun little hallucination and inaccurate output events, like what these control freaks in China are engaged in, are going to blow up in people's faces. They're going to realize that this is not the totalitarian tool of control that they think it is. Because one article I remember reading about a year ago was that a major fast food chain was utilizing some sort of AI to handle their checkouts. Actually, lots of them were. But in order for them to work, they actually had to have a team based out of the Philippines to actually answer everything. The AI wasn't answering; it was actually a person on the other side, because the AIs would give the wrong answers, right? So everything is dependent upon human input, and if they can't do it better than a human, and they aren't ever going to be able to do it better than a human, chances are then humans are going to be doing it. Which, if humans could not do it at all, then I don't think that China would be engaged in trying to encourage births within the population. They'd be like, yep, we got the shoe in, we're good to go. And it's clear that these things are still being developed, or they're trying to develop them, while at the same time trying to scare us to death, thinking that our freedoms are gone for good, while they wrestle with a technologically flawed product. And we'll get to technologically flawed products a lot in this show, but just wanted to cover that briefly. Moving back into geopolitics and away from geoeconomics for a time, let's go back to the Levant. A major event happened in the city of Tel Aviv, Israel, over the course of the last 24 hours. A drone that was flown by the Yemeni military was able to successfully traverse the Red Sea, go over Egyptian territory into the Eastern Mediterranean, and then flew due east into downtown Tel Aviv and exploded less than approximately 100 meters from the front door of the U.S. consulate. Killed at least one Israeli, wounded at least half a dozen others minimum. according to official reports. And this is interesting because local Hebrew media initially at the time was claiming that it was a criminal event that was related to a car bomb. And they were also blaming human error on their failure to sound air raids, but it went completely undetected by their air raid systems. Well, let's have a look at this article. This is from the Cradle. Yemen declares Tel Aviv unsafe zone after a successful drone attack. The Israeli army has blamed a human error on their failure to sound air raid sirens or intercept the drone, which they confirmed came in from the south. Here's the leader. The Yemeni armed forces has claimed responsibility for a deadly drone attack that hit the Israeli city of Tel Aviv during the early hours of July 19th, killing at least one and injuring several others. And here's a quote from the article, and this is from Yemeni Armed Forces spokesman Brigadier General Yahya Sari. Quote, the operation was carried out with a new drone called Yafa. Yafa, for those that aren't familiar, is the Arabic name for the city that is that is called Tel Aviv in Israel at this time. That was what its original name was Yafa. So continuing with the quote, which can bypass the enemy's interception systems and cannot be detected by radar. The operation successfully achieved its objectives, close quote. We have radar-proof drones in the warfare space, ladies and gentlemen. This completely changes the game. This means that we have custom technology that can evade radar detection systems. The most expensive radar detection systems that the United States of America has access to. Which means that if the USS Roosevelt couldn't detect it, which it did not, and its Iron Dome couldn't detect it, that means that if they launch a full-scale attack, it's going to do some serious damage. That, or we've got a situation where it could be simply advanced intelligence and it was allowed to take place to carry out a retaliation. And a retaliation did actually take place. Israel did bomb Hodeida port today or yesterday. I don't remember exactly. I think it was yesterday. And prior to showtime, I was seeing some OSINT feeds indicating that a counterattack was being prepared to be launched by the Yemenis with at least 12 ballistic missiles and 12 drones, perhaps more. So, but continuing with the article, Brigadier General Yahya Sari also stated, he also declared Tel Aviv and a quote, unsafe zone and a primary target within our weapon range, close quote. It reveals that Sana'a holds a bank of quote, a bank of targets in occupied Palestine, including sensitive military and security targets, and will, with Allah's help, continue to strike these targets in response to the enemy's massacres and daily crimes against our brothers in Gaza, close quote. So this is another step up on the escalation ladder. So more direct attacks are probably going to be coming Yemen's way, not just from the Israelis, but potentially from Saudi Arabia as well. But I think Saudi Arabia is hesitant to get involved in this, especially considering the damage that was done to Saudi Aramco with half of their oil infrastructure being taken out in a single attack. So, and that was, a less strong Yemen than what we see today, because they're not currently being besieged by Saudi Arabia or the UAE in the same manner as they were at that time. Moving on to our next story, which is the International Court of Justice, and this is from Quds News Network. It's extracted from an article, but posted to Telegram in slightly shortened form. So they have delivered their advisory opinion in respect to the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. Now, there are a total of 9 talking points here. I'm going to go through them one at a time. First, the president of the International Court of Justice stated that Israel's practices following its occupation of Palestinian territories in 1967 have violated the right to self-determination. Second, Israel has abandoned its commitments under the 1965 Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Third, the court state that occupying authorities cannot forcibly transfer the population of occupied territories or settle some of their own citizens there. Fourth, transferring settlers to the West Bank or East Jerusalem contradicts Article 49 of the Geneva Convention. Fifth, Israel's policy of exploiting the natural resources of the occupied territories contradicts its international obligations. Sixth, the court is not convinced that the extension of Israeli law to the West Bank and Jerusalem is justified, which basically means that the West Bank and Jerusalem are not subject to Israeli law, according to this interpretation. Seventh, the state of Israel must provide compensation for damages to all affected individuals in the occupied territories. Eighth, Israel must immediately cease settlement activities and evacuate existing settlements. And ninth, and last, Israel is obligated to end the occupation and terminate its illegal presence in the Palestinian territories. And they go on to state that all countries should not recognize Israel's presence in the occupied territories at all. This has massive international legal implications, ladies and gentlemen, if international law is to be respected at all. We've got an Israeli state that's currently attempting to rewrite the laws of war with their actions in Gaza. And the stark differential between this particular ruling and, or at least this, this particular document clearly states that there are not going to be the same types of methods for providing resources to Israel without major legal or financial or other types of consequences by way of sanction or something like this. But it seems rather toothless, and it could simply be just more rhetoric at this stage, because making these rulings only means one thing, but it's very indirect forms of justice unless there is some sort of mechanism in order to enforce the ruling. What those mechanisms are seem to be indirect. They don't. There doesn't seem to be a direct way to enforce this for obvious reasons, because it would mean direct war with the United States in this context. So, but that being the case, it's pretty clear that the conflicts that we're seeing are outfoxing the best technology that the U.S. Navy has to offer. Moving on to our next story, which is about Russia's wheat supply. This is from Sputnik Africa. Russia's wheat supply has reached 26.1% of global exports in the 2023 to 2024 agricultural season. And Russia has exported a record 55.3 million tons of wheat during this agricultural season. An analysis of the International Grains Council's data conducted by Sputnik showed on Friday, 2 days ago, Russia's export volume reached the highest figure in modern history and jumped by 15% year on year. Global wheat exports in the last agricultural year stood at 211.7 million tons against 208.7 million year on year. The European Union was the second largest wheat exporter after Russia, with the bloc's supplies increasing by 0.7% to 35.3 million tons. And Canada came in third, with decreased exports of 3% over the same period to 25 million tons. Nowhere on the list is Ukraine in this particular report, and I think that we know why. It's going to become very difficult for Ukraine to export any agricultural products, considering the situation that they have in the war. And while they don't technically they're not technically landlocked away from the Black Sea, they still do have port access to it in the southeastern regions of the country that are not currently Russian controlled. Those days appear to be coming to an end, and there has been more aggressive Russian naval activity in the Black Sea targeting Ukrainian vessels. So I'll need to double check and see what Ukraine's wheat exports are looking like, because Ukraine historically has been one of the top exporters of wheat right alongside Russia, but they're not even in the top three now, which means that Russia has essentially captured almost all of Ukraine's market share in the wheat market, which is a huge financial blow to Ukraine as a result, and likely will be a determining factor in the outcome of the war. Now we're going to come up to the last couple of stories from today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen. In the big news over the weekend. So this is breaking news, and this is from a Telegraph article, and it is titled, quote, and this is from Friday, global tech outage hits companies around the world. TV stations, airports, and banks around the world have been knocked offline in a massive outage, causing Windows computers to suddenly shut down. And cybersecurity engineers pointed to a problem with CrowdStrike, which is a piece of antivirus software. It's actually threat detection and response software. It's more than just antivirus. It is implemented in a wide variety of different types of environments, from cloud environments to standard computers, which appeared to be causing computers to crash. Sanad Arun, who's the founder of cyber research company Imperium, described the incident as, quote, CrowdStrike doomsday, close quote. I think in this gentleman's opinion, CrowdStrike's days are numbered. He could be right. Television channels, airports, and banks around the world have been knocked offline, a massive outage causing Windows computers to suddenly shut down. If you've seen any, or if you've been in any airports recently, ladies and gentlemen, you saw Windows blue screens of death. Well, this is what caused it. Microsoft cybersecurity technology is in the firing line over the outage. Neither the reason to move away from big tech, ladies and gentlemen, move towards free open source software. It's critically important to reconsider your choices with your operating systems, ladies and gentlemen, and be very careful which technology platforms you consume as well. Technology has been weaponized. This is your proof. Okay. Now, something very similar happened in 2009, but before we get to that, CrowdStrike shares on the day of the on the day of this particular, might as well call it a cyber attack, because that's essentially what it is. CrowdStrike Holdings shares fell by 20% in early trading after the incident took place. So I haven't looked at their stock price of late, but things aren't looking good for CrowdStrike, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's going to be a good idea for people to look into free open source software solutions for their operating systems. And I can perhaps speak to that in more detail in future shows if there's an interest from the audience. And now for our last story of the day, probably the most important story of the day, is that the current president of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., in a press release dated July 21st, 2024, reads as follows. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances. Which toxic substances, Mr. Biden? Continuing. Passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I knew none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. Interesting how he says that it's a once-in-a-century pandemic. I guess they have it on a schedule. Interesting. Continuing. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me re-elected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do, and when we do it together, we just have to remember we are the United States of America. Joe Biden. Well, it's official, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Biden will not be the president of the United States. He may not be alive by this time next year if his um, health is any determining factor. A few things from this. Well, why are you lowering prescription drug costs for seniors? Why are you even trying to get them on prescription drugs after what happened? Right? Expanding affordable health care. Where can you get affordable health care? Good luck with that. Critically needed care to veterans exposed to toxic substances. Well, how many active military were exposed to toxic substances when you shove the drugs in their arms? Right? So everything in that first paragraph is a blatant lie. But this is precisely what politics is, ladies and gentlemen. Power comes from lying and getting people to play along. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden. It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump. It doesn't matter who it is. It's very important, regardless of your political ideology or philosophy, if you have one. If many people do not, many people are averse to politics for good and potentially for bad reasons, depending on who you ask. I think it's very important to take stock of this and realize that, you know what, no matter how much lying takes place in politics, nothing can overcome an idea whose time has come. And the ideas that are coming out of America at this time are we need to disengage from our overstretch in the Middle East. Notice he did not mention anything about the horrifying consequences of American foreign policy in the Levant right now. Didn't say a word about it. And just put in some piecemeal placeholders. You're interested to know who actually wrote this. But that is all of my talking points for this week, Jason. So I'll just toss it over to you for brief commentary and TA as appropriate, sir. Back to you.
Thanks as always, Chris. Wild stuff.
Welcome.
Obviously, the Biden thing. A lot of people knew that was coming. It's been talked about for quite a while. People were thinking it might even happen last election. So now our question is, what mess do we get out of this, both short term and long term, right? Excuse me.
Mhm.
So we're going to be dealing with President Kamala Harris for at least the next, because they don't turn it over until technically next year, right? So at least like the next 6 months, I believe. So
Well, from my perspective, Jason, I think what we're seeing, if I may use a natural analogy, is that old rotten trees are dying and falling away and making way for a new forest with more bounty and more abundance. That's really what we're seeing. That's what we're witnessing right now. It's painful to go through, but we'll get there in the end. I know we will.
the optimism is appreciated because obviously it's a tough time for the country right now, and it's not like because oh no, the president's stepping down. It's because we've had this idiot running the show for the last 3.5 years. By proxy, of course, he's not actually running the show. So it's just it's nice to hear a little bit of positivity, but it's very hard to stay positive when you're dealing with these types of people in these types of situations. So let's hope there's some sort of a silver lining ahead for us over the next few months and years as things start to develop with whatever happens with this election, which, for right now, it looks like it's pretty solidly in Trump's hands, and I'm not sure what could really disrupt that at this point, even if it's, Michelle Obama running against him, which I think is probably pretty likely uh, when it comes down to it. I don't think Kamala Harris is very marketable as a presidential candidate by herself, and I think the polls bore that out the last time, so they'll
Well, it's
probably be
interesting you
pushing Big
mentioned that.
Mike.
Yeah, they're interesting you mentioned that because the Secret Service, as of today, refused requests for additional security for Trump. Very interesting indeed. So, and we've also got an announcement that the head of the Secret Service is resigning as early as Monday. So, the Secret Service is probably going to be subpoenaed for hearings extensive hearings. But yeah, anytime we got an assassination attempt of a president or presidential candidate during an election cycle, and it survived, you got to get to the bottom of it real quick, because if you don't, there's going to be more of them, and things that could stop them. It would be another attempt, and I think that there will be more, not just this year, but well into the future. Especially considering the assassination of Qasem Soleimani in 2020.
Right.
Iran put a price on Trump's head. People are forgetting that.
And here we are. Here we are. So, should be pretty interesting. I would expect a wild ride over the next 6 to 12 months. And, don't be surprised if something happens early on in Trump's presidency to disrupt the financial markets and any momentum that his election may have brought in. So, see how that plays out as well. Any parting shots from you, sir, before I jump into our technical analysis today?
One more thing I did want to mention in this week's show is that don't take your eyes off of the ball when it comes to your investment strategy, as well as to your personal development. Oftentimes during economic crises is when the best personal development can take place, and business opportunities, mainly because there is a change over in terms of what people value within society, and they're not going to value trinkets like they used to, because we are not going to be having the same degree of prosperity that we once did. We're already living through it today, but the more that you reduce your standard of living and improve your quality of life, the better, because you'll gain more skills: bushcraft skills, hunting skills, farming skills, learning how to dig a well, learning how to build a dugout. Invest your time in doing these things. Getting peace of mind comes through taking action, so don't be idle. And that's all I have.
Sage advice, much appreciated as always. Thanks, Chris. All right, so we've got a few things on deck here. Let me jump on out all of this stuff here. Oh, what's this? This is Pepe. We told you about Pepe. I forget where it was at. I want to say it was probably in this area here. It's gone up quite a bit since then. It's sitting at just right around just under $150 million market cap, 3.8 million in liquidity locked. And this is the Chinese Pepe, so don't be surprised if this thing goes to $1 billion or more in market cap. This is a swap play that you can still jump in on, and right now, this is just your basic bull flag from what I can tell here. All right. Maybe a little bit of a descending triangle there, but to me, more than anything, this looks like a cup and handle. All right. So measured move on something like that be about another 33% for Pepe. And I really would expect that to go much higher in the bull. So it's just kind of taking its dear sweet time, just stepping up, stepping up, stepping up. So that is a altcoin gem, and I'm kind of starting the technical analysis off with the altcoin gem every week. I have something very special I'm going to be dropping in the Discord. If you like the idea of that, smash the like button if you haven't already, and hit the bell for notifications. Get subscribed to the channel. The stuff that we're going to be posting in the Discord is absolutely alpha. If you're not in the Discord, you will have to contact me privately, be it on Twitter or whatever other means you have that are necessary to reach out, and I will send you an invite link to the Discord for free. if I vet you to be the type of person that I want in my Discord. I don't just let anyone in. But currently we are not charging. At some point we will be. You will be grandfathered in at a lower price once we start doing that. Okay? So moving on from Pepe, which is the pick of the week here. A super interesting CME gap that's opening up right now on this Sunday. CME opened at around 68.6. Price action currently at 68.250. Gap is down to around 67.6 area. All right. And full disclosure, I did actually open up a small short at the open of CME here. So I'm in a small profit right now, just a few percent. So we'll see if that gap closes. You know, we're looking at the 4 hour here. It's starting to get pretty cooked on the stochastics. So I would at least expect this gap to fill, if not a return to the 21 MA, or in fact a fill of this much larger gap, which actually goes back down to 58.8. So that would be a pretty sizable, wick or flush down. But if we're to look at this from a purely technical perspective, in terms of where this opened today, oh look, that inefficiency is right there just below the golden pocket. Surprise, surprise, don't be shocked if this area of liquidity fills just below it. That's at around 58K. Okay, and that is on CME. Obviously, there is a bit of a premium in terms of the price action there. So be cautious, folks. Be cautious. There's some things to consider here right now. So when we look at the weekly, which is about to close here in an hour and 15 minutes, it's a very strong candle that's printing, obviously. Very, very bullish candle. And the oscillators are telling us this is likely just getting started. So I would expect this to close really strong, but there's nothing saying that we can't see some significant retracement first, as we are actually above the 21 MA now on the weekly, which is super bullish, right? And the price action has also popped back above this purple line, which we were fighting. And that purple line goes way, way back, as I've showed people previously, back to the wick down in the panic dump in 2020, and then back down to this swing wick here, all right, which was all the way back in 2015. Okay, so this has been a really, really long-term trend line support, which at one point did turn resistance. We flipped below it. We're denied here. Consolidated, broke out, came up, denied again, wick down, consolidated, broke up, support, broke out, support, tested, broke, now retesting again as resistance. Okay, so this has been really, really critical in terms of how we've been playing with this purple line throughout the run since the FTX collapse in 2022, which has been a clear uptrend. Let's establish that right now. Calling this a bear market, you can't call this a bear market. Okay, this was the bear market. This falling wedge here was the bear market. After we broke out of this and retested the 200 daily, this was confirmation the bear market was over. So I'm sorry if you're still referring to shit as a bear market. It's not a bear market, folks. It's been over for a long time. We are just progressing to the final phase of what will be a parabolic move for this bull market. So as this month progresses here over the next 10 days, look for your monthly close. And what we want to see is a monthly close above previous all-time high. And what that will do is give us the momentum that we're looking for. All right. So right now, it looks pretty clear that we'll be closing above that level. A close above this last established all-time high, which would be, in terms of closure, around 71.3, 71.4. If we see a monthly close above that level, we are taking off like a rocket. The next areas of interest would be 84K, 113K, 175K, and 243K, potentially even 360K is my absolute bullish case for this bull run. All right. So things are kicking off in that manner. They really, really are. I honestly think that we will see a very large move very soon. And this line right here will be an interesting resistance as we come up against that. Um, you could see a rejection around that 100K area as we bump up against that line. If this line is flipped to support, which is the spider line from the previous top back in 21, then I would expect at the very least this target at this 1.618 extension to be taken out, because this 113K at that point should be easily surpassed. All right. So I'm not saying that has to happen, honestly. We could see rejection at 84K, and that could be the top for the bull run, and that could be it. It's going to depend on the divergences that are printed. It's going to depend on a number of things. So we'll continue to update the macro as that information becomes available to us. All right. So I'm going to flip over to Coinbase right now. I did just open up a small short, full disclosure. All right. And I'm being a little bit premature in doing that. I am in a small profit right now, but what I'm looking for is actually a break of this 200 MA on the 1 minute. Yes, I said the 1 minute. Okay. If you go back and take a look here, the last time we broke that as support, you had a nice short here. Okay. Nice short. Lost the support here. Nice short. So that smaller time frame, that 200 MA, is something that you can look for. Now, you're asking, well, how did you even come to the conclusion that you wanted to short this? Well, there's actually a pretty strong bearish divergence that came in, and that was on some of the, smaller but still larger small time frames. So the 7 minute, you can see here, we've had higher highs on the price action, lower lows on the RSI. Stochastics are weakening. As we zoom out a little bit, you got that same divergence on the 15 minute. This price action has to return to the 21 MA, so I'm shorting at least to like 67,575, and I will babysit and kind of take a look from there. But if we take a look where this move is at right here, and maybe they'll make me look bad while we're recording here, we'll see. But there should be some type of retracement out of this. All right. And like a bullish retracement would hold this 200 MA, and that would be just below the 0.5 fib. Okay. But you could see retracement all the way to 66.7, which is the golden pocket area. So this should break down as this recording continues. Again, nothing here should be taken as financial advice. Get a financial advisor, do your own due diligence and research before entering any coin, project, investment, or trade. Okay, so that's just what I'm doing in the very, very short term. I've closed so many scalps over the past week. I've been building spot bags of both Bitcoin and Caspa with those scalps. So good stuff there. Another thing to take a look at here, there was this divergence here which played out to that, right? And now we got this divergence here, which is pretty strong on the hourly. The RSI wasn't able to flip above the 70 level, but the price action flipped above this upper Bollinger Band. So there is a decent chance with this much lower in the price action, this much higher, and this divergence in the RSI, that we'll see some retracement as I was just discussing on those smaller time frames. So larger time frame confirmation there as well. And I have been playing the futures on MEXC over the past week and having a pretty good time with that, folks. So I did disclose entry in the Discord on that. Um, yeah, so things have been looking pretty good. I'm not looking at anything too terribly bearish here for Bitcoin. Uh, may just be short-term retracement, as I said before. We can continue a bullish trend. You got a point of control here, like just below 67K. So just watch out for those levels, folks. Bitcoin dominance right now is still in this symmetrical triangle. Potentially is trying to break out here on the RSI. You can see here that's kind of waffling. So the idea is here, this is still consolidating to make a large move. And, you know, technically, when you think about what Bitcoin's doing, Bitcoin hasn't actually broken the larger range either. So because of that, your dominance is still in a range on the daily as well. So, you know, you're like, well, Jason Bruce, what are you referring to on? I'm referring to like this here on your daily, this range that we've been in, right? So this whole range here, this accumulation, all right, between whatever the high was, 73.5 down to 54. This has been accumulation, this is range. So we're still in this range, all right? So we need to see a break of the range, either to the upside or to the downside, in order to see those oscillators really tell us the story, and in order to see this Bitcoin dominance make some sort of a break. So do we make the break up to 59 to 61%, as I was talking about, or does this come up, fake out, double top, triple top, etc., break down, lose the 200 daily, come back down and retest this 200 weekly just below 50%? That would pump your altcoin bags. So typically what has to happen is this is going to come up first when Bitcoin pumps, and then Bitcoin will level out or come down a little bit, and there will be maybe a little bit of a dump, and at that point it'll be a perfect opportunity to jump into altcoins from Bitcoin. All right, there have been a number of altcoins moving though, looking pretty good in terms of that. So right now, flipping over to Tether dominance, this may have bottomed out on the 1 hour. So Tether dominance is coming in. Short should play short term. Bitcoin should see that small retracement we were talking about. This is a bear flag, no matter how you slice it. So, you know, you lost the 200 daily. So I don't see Tether dominance regaining that. And this is going to go really, really low by the time the run really kicks in. So, you know, realize right now it's got to play out this bullish divergence here on the hourly. So if you run a fib there, I would expect it comes up to this POC, maybe a little higher, and loses momentum. If it flips that, could take a shot at the 200 daily, but we'll see what happens with that. You know, if there's a retest of this 200 daily, that might mean that 58K scenario that I was looking at would be in the cards. I don't think that's the likely scenario right now. That's not the probability at the moment. So we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll see if this rejection occurs in between this POC and the golden pocket, say around 4.8%. All right. Something else to note here, and, you know, not trying to toot my own horn. Excuse me. Just is what it is. But, you know, I had this yellow line highlighted as a point of resistance You know, I have these yellow lines as sort of areas where you can see a support resistance flip, right? So this came up, it wicked up right to that yellow line, right to that yellow line. Why would I have that line there? It's because I knew that it might be resistance. So, uh, you know, that line was there probably not since last week, but since, you know, a while before that. So just keep in mind, you'll figure out how to map out these levels as things progress and as you're able to recognize patterns and Fibonacci and things like that a little bit more. So, you know, if we see a move up past these areas, 200 daily and this 1.618 extension around 5%, potentially an area of interest. All right. And if you were to come up here, that would create like a falling broadening wedge type of a scenario. So I think we need to be really, really careful about how this month is closing the next few weeks, or I should say the next week or so. Uh, and going into the monthly close here should be really, really volatile. I expect it to be volatile to the upside, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that we could create a scenario like that where you would see something like this happen. And maybe create a falling broadening wedge, which might have a little more of a bullish bias for tether dominance. So we'll keep an eye on this. You know, I'm being open-minded here because there are a lot of people leaning to the idea that we're going to see, you know, new highs coming in very soon. I think that's very possible. I do think it's very possible. But at the same time, I have to remain open-minded so that I can have all scenarios in play. With that said, this is a chart that Chris asked me to take a look at. This is the others.d, and this potentially shows us like the dominance for everything outside of the top 10, so essentially altcoins, right? Excuse me. So there's a channel called Crypto Klondike that was taking a look at something similar. And when I looked at his chart and I looked at mine, lo and behold, I had mine in a very similar uptrending channel here. His was cut just a little bit different. Not sure how or why, but he had it something like that where the top wasn't quite connected, but whatever. That's kind of inconsequential at this point. What we're looking at is this channel, right? So what we need to understand at this point is there's some type of divergence there that could hold us up. When we look at the 2-week, you know, the 2-week isn't giving us that divergence, which is what he was looking at, but he doesn't look at the oscillators the way that I do. So what do we have here in terms of what the oscillators can offer us on the weekly? Not seeing divergence there. What I will say, however, is this is a healthy retracement. So when we look at this macro retracement here, this came down to a very favorable area where you're holding now the golden pocket as support, actually wicking above it now, and you did wick below it, below the 706, but well above the 786. So to me, this is a bullish retracement, but you have to overcome the extension, which if you take it from the bottom of that wick, again to the top of that local formation, lo and behold, look at where your golden pocket is. It's right around this 200 weekly moving average, which is curving up just above the 200 daily and the 21 MA. So these are your hurdles here for the altcoins. If you see this dominance flip this area just above 12% into support, you're going to see a huge move for your altcoins. All right. So this is the chart to keep an eye on. I will say the stochastics are in our favor on the weekly. And if we just zoom in a little bit to the daily, what's actually playing out here is a really nice bullish divergence, which was right here. Okay? It's not like the strongest thing that you would see on the RSI, but in terms of how it's shaping up against the price action, this was a pretty large swing. So what this has now done is created this consolidation channel, and the likelihood of a push up to the 200 daily and 200 weekly, again just above 12%, is your probability. So altcoins likely to start moving. If you haven't averaged into your positions yet, not financial advice, as always, nothing that's said here should be construed as such. But if you're down more than 20% on a bag still at this stage, you can go for it. Okay, so altcoins ripping here all of a sudden, absolutely ripping. My short just hit the stop loss, so I'm out on that. A small loss, but wow. Okay, so we're pumping here. We're pumping. I still feel like there's some bearish divergence that's coming in here. I am not going to re-enter the market until I see something a little more decisive in terms of where I can get an entry. This is a crazy area. Although, if we chop this up like this, is that a thing? Wow, that's got an extreme tilt on it if that's a head and shoulders. Just going to go body to body and not even wick to wick here just to make sure that I can catch the move. That'd take it up to 70K. All right. If you were to go wick to wick, take you to like 70 and a half. And if you went with the aggressive measured move, it would take you above that to just below 71. So those might be some areas of interest if you're taking along here. All right. Might be some areas of interest if you're taking along here. Super interesting price action as we're moving through things here. So yeah, total 3 altcoins absolutely exploding here just now. Got something similar playing out here. Kind of trying to be a head and shoulders, but not quite confirming that neckline. Regardless, you've got this nice wick down to the 21 MA on the 4 hour, and altcoins absolutely exploding. Wow. Wow. Crazy, folks. Crazy. Absolutely wild. So, breakout. Big breakout. Happening right here on this recording. So, ETH BTC breaking out along with that. Folks, this might be it. This daily still looks sketch, though. Daily still looks sketch. Do have a bit of hidden bullish here. All right. I think. No, it's not. There's nothing there. Nothing there on the 4 hour in terms of divergence that should push that, which is really super weird, right? Oh no, wait. Here it is. Sorry, folks, I'm expanding my fast window pretty wide here, so I'm coming up on about 16 hours. So I apologize if I missed that, but yeah, this is a nice bullish divergence on the 4 hour for ETH BTC. So if you look at these wicks down, much higher in price action, corresponding to this low on the RSI. So you had a bullish divergence here, and now another one formed here. So wick down once again, right to an area of support that I had established. I don't know how I get those lines right, folks, but I do. All right. So hourly for Ethereum on Coinbase. You're in sort of a little bit of a parallel uptrend channel. If that breaks out, conservative area of interest would be around 3,700. Aggressive measured move is going to be around 38.75. All right, just below 38.75. Obviously, you have to break this channel first. Could see some consolidation before that happens. Come back down here, bounce around a little bit, make like an inverse head and shoulders type of a thing. All right. So we'll see how that pattern plays out. Moving on to BNB, third largest cryptocurrency by market cap. Did break out of this flag. Retested that area in the 21 MA on the 4 hour. This is looking very bullish. So bullish, bullish, bullish. I do still have my big trade open there. So nothing changed there. Bullish. Kaspa. Kaspa had this nice dip down earlier. 172 area. Holding a lot of spot with Kaspa right now. I think it's going to take off pretty nicely. This it doesn't quite want to give me the neckline there, but I think you're going to see that play out similarly. Okay, so Kaspa should be making the move here. See if the 4 hours giving us any juice. See that wick's for buying, folks. That wick is for buying. That wick came down. It created hidden bullish. That wick is for buying. I buy some more Kaspa on spot here. All right. So next areas of interest for Cas, 19.5 to 20 cents area. Above that, about 23.5 cents. Yeah, 23.5 cents range, somewhere in that area. So that'd be the next area of interest for Kaspa. I do expect it to make that move sooner rather than later, as long as Bitcoin is cooperating. Pendle, I put out the trade last week. That trade moved pretty well. It's been moving sideways since then. Usually these rounding tops don't pay the bills, but you came down and it looks like, yeah, right now you're flashing the bullish div. So the bullish divergence on the 1 hour saved this accumulation. Wick down just above the 200 daily to remain bullish. Price action back above the 21 MA now. And point of control here at around $4.58 is going to be the level that you want to look for. Above that, measured move is $5.78 for Pendle. This is going to go much higher in the bull run, folks. Not financial advice, but this is an altcoin you might want to hold. All right, XRP has been very, very hot. Made a move above the 200 weekly moving average. Came back down. It's been consolidating since then. Since waking up to around 63.75 cents, which hasn't seen that level for quite a while. Right now, after bouncing off the 21 MA on the 4 hour, price action is back above the critical 200 weekly moving average. This is probably the last time you'll see XRP below 60 cents for a while. Not financial advice. Once again, But I am holding XRP on spot, and whales are accumulating as well. Crypto even talked about it today, and he and other influencers are not proponents of XRP or its fundamentals, but they're seeing something in the charts and it's telling them this is a thing. And we've been saying it for a while that this one would make moves once the market was finally ready. And usually this one doesn't move until the market has become a little more mature within the bull run. So watch for XRP. Above this level, you're going to have some resistance at 66.5 cents. There's areas of interest at 70, 71.5, 72.5, 73.5, 74 cents. Above that area, you're going to quickly gap up to 77.5, 80.5, and 83 cents. I would say if you move out of that area, there's some resistance at 87, 88. If that's broken, you're going to gap up to $1. All right. And above $1, new all-time highs will be coming in pretty quickly. Okay. So I was asked by Ryan R., and shout out to Ryan in the Discord, was asked to take a look at Ondo. So Ondo Finance looks like it's trying to break out. Okay. If we connect all these lines here, it's really, really odd because you had this like fake out, right? And then retest. So this looks bullish. Next areas of interest, if you break this point of control, which is right around $1.20, $1.25, $1.32, $1.39, and about $1.35 to $1.46. Above that level, you'll take a stab at the all-time high, which is around, that $1.46 level, excuse me. See here. So above that, your next area of interest on like a measured move would be $1.69. And you've got a 1.618 extension at $1.87. I would expect Ondo to probably take out the full extension here, so when we look at where this might go, maybe $3.50 might be peak in the bull run. At this point, I think most of the gains are exhausted for Ondo. I really do. I think you can do better from here than a 3.5x. I think you can do better in a number of coins from here than a 3.5x, XRP being one of them. Again, none of this stuff is financial advice and should not be taken as such, but that's how I would see this, because this is already a very large market cap, and just in order to move to this, $3.50 level, this thing's going to be pretty large. So I'm just not seeing the same, type of gains that came out from this thing early in the bull run, where people were buying this thing, around 20 to 25 cents. And again, I mean, even if you were buying there, you're still only up a 4x. I'm not sure this is the most aggressive asset that you could be in this particular bull run. Okay, I think it was easily tradable in a few of these swings. All right, and it makes pretty obvious, patterns and accumulations. But I think XRP can outperform it. But that's just me saying that right now. We'll see. We'll see where things are at in 6 to 12 months. But I'm going to say XRP outperforms Ondo from here. All right. And I was asked by Xavier to take a look at this index. So just real quick, folks, this is the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. All right. This is the ARCA ETF. And, just in terms of price action here, what do we have? It's just higher highs and higher lows. You held this point of control, broke out. These ETFs create a lot of inefficiencies, which, in my trading, at least in terms of crypto, I look for those things to fill more often than not. With the traditional markets, they don't fill as often. Okay. You also don't get as sharp a retracement. So right now you're sitting between the 236 and the 382 fib. It's quite possible that was it, in terms of the dump on this thing. And if we take a look here, On the hourly, you've got some pretty strong hidden bullish there and multiple drives at that. Multiple drives. So 3 drives of hidden bullish that could hold that up on the hourly. What I don't like is that it hasn't closed below that hourly lower Bollinger Band, so you could still see a little further retracement there. If you're holding this thing a little more long term, you're at all-time highs right now. I don't think there's any need to worry about the day-to-day fluctuations. I would just hold this and take your gains, because this is like, falling broadening wedge breakout and point of control. All right, so again, we did measured move on this before. Let me do it again. Move out to the log here. Could take some time, but end of next year, is what you might be looking at. Might double up by the end of next year. Not the most exciting thing. Excuse me. But just demonstrating how technical analysis works, folks. This is likely to be in an uptrend for an extended period of time on the weekly. So, yeah, circling back to BTC. Very interesting. So we're just seeing sideways consolidation for right now. And we can stay sideways. You can stay sideways from here and bump into the 21 MA. You may have to come down just a little bit, 67.7, whatever, somewhere in that area. I would expect sideways and up and continuation this week. It's trying to move back up right now. So that's the deal right now. Your next levels of interest, as I said, 70,000, 70.5, just below 71 and 71.7. Above that, I would expect momentum to pick up quite a bit. So we'll see what happens for BTC and for the markets. That's going to be the show this week, folks. If you made it this far and you didn't for some reason, as I asked multiple times this week, because we really, really need engagement. On your way out, if you haven't, honk the like button, hit the subscribe and the bell for notifications so you get notified in the future when we bring you these podcasts and timely updates. Folks, this has been the Crypto Clown World Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bruce. I'm going to get honking on out of here. I'll see what I've got left for the rest of my Sunday. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend. Take care. Much love. God bless, folks. We will be seeing you soon.